Good afternoon and welcome once again to Wave Your Grades. We are on KUAW.org, emanating from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. My name is Carl Boyd. I am honored, as a matter of fact, to be a part of the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center Broadcasting Network, which is KUAW.org. KUAW stands for Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. And that person who was responsible for developing that particular network is honoring us by producing, engineering, co-hosting.
Troubleshooting.
Absolutely. His name is Louis George Walker, and brings us Wave Your Grades every Saturday, a program that is dedicated to American veterans and motivating to American students. We don't have veterans and students every Saturday necessarily because of things that are going on in the community. I always make the disclaimer, I am a civilian. My oldest brother was a Marine. Next to him was an airman. Next to him was a soldier. And they allowed me to be the first in the family to graduate from college. I think I owe them, and I think that American students owe those who sacrifice. And that's what this program is all about. Now, today we have a very, very special guest in Millis Doc Bass. And Doc Bass, before I bring you on, let me indicate to those who do look and listen on a regular basis that the reason that we have come on a little later than ordinary, that 1 o'clock time frame, has to do with technology. Brother Louis George Walker, one of the good things about being on KUAW.org is because it is all about technology. That's what it's about. And we are looking forward to making some announcements about what the Black Family Technology Awareness Association is doing, about what KUAW.org is doing. And before we ask Millis Doc Bass to come on, I always ask Brother Louis George Walker, founder of KUAW.org, to let our viewers slash listeners know how they can access KUAW.org, some of the things that are going on. And after that, I will ask Millis Doc Bass to get us started on today's program. But first, thank you, Brother Louis George Walker.
All right, Carl, this is KUAW Radio, Kansas City's global community radio station. You can pick us up on Facebook. You can pick us up on Instagram. We are on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. There's a lot of different ways that we can be heard, and we're just so glad to be a part of this radio station today. There are a lot of things going on. I don't think that the community knows, but we've got things in the works for KUAW Radio, so be sure and tune in. You can also listen to us on your Google Smart Speaker or your Amazon speaker. If you tell it to play KUAW, it'll play. We have music that is broadcast 24 hours a day. Matter of fact, today we've got a couple of blues shows coming on. We do gospel, there's jazz, we've got a good smooth jazz show. So tune into KUAW. You can get us online on our website, www.kuaw.org, or if you have the online radio bot or my tuner, you go to those sites or tune in and just search for KUAW Radio, and you'll hear us. We are broadcasting 24/7. So we thank you for joining, and now back to Carl Boyd and Wave Your Grades.
Thank you so very much, Louis George Walker. And today's very special guest can be introduced any number of ways. If I were to community activist, that would be accurate. If I say minister Millis Doc Bass, that is indeed accurate. If I say educator, Millis Doc Bass, accurate. Author, multiple times, that is Millis Doc Bass. And columnist, I am also, speaking of Minister Reverend Millis Doc Bass. And he honors us with his presence today. I asked him to come on for a couple of specific reasons, but it will certainly go beyond that. But let me ask that Millis Doc Bass introduce us to himself in whatever way is appropriate. Thank you, Millis Doc Bass, for being with us this afternoon.
And thank you, Dr. Boyd. I say that affectionately. I've been appreciating you for years. And so I consider it quite an honor to come on this particular platform with these two genius brothers. I mean, they were able to troubleshoot and get us out of the thicket to get to join the rest of the public on this platform. So thank you for allowing me to share this time with you. I don't know what I can do to enhance it, but it seems to me that you guys are way down the road, not only on the technology, but in joining the rest of the world in these multiple platforms. There shouldn't be anyone on the planet who is not connected to somebody. There's so many ways to do it, and so I think I'm really fascinated with it. I get kind of behind in it, and I hope I don't lag so far behind that I'll be in the Stone Age while you guys are in the space age. But thank you again for asking me to come on. I appreciate the opportunity.
You are certainly more than welcome. And let me just say, not by any means wanting to be falsely modest or falsely humble. I am not the one who does the troubleshooting. Now, I might be responsible for some of the trouble, but it is really Louis George Walker, Black Family Technology Awareness Association, W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, who are really those who are involved in the technology. And as a matter of fact, one of the gentlemen I want to mention on today's program, Minister Wheeler Parker from the Chicago area, and I were talking earlier today, and I admitted to having technophobia because there's so much I don't know. But getting past that, getting into today's topics, let me say that I had something different in mind that I wanted to talk to Millis Doc Bass about, and that is the role of clergy in today's, for lack of a better term, interesting times. But at the time that I wanted to engage you, Brother Bass, I had not read your very stirring column on Alvin Sykes and determined that I would like to start with that, your tribute to Alvin Sykes, congratulating you on a beautifully written piece in the KUAW paper and asking you to speak to it in your own way.
Well, I had the privilege, you know, I met Alvin back in the very early 80s when I worked for Alvin Brooks at the Human Relations Department, City Hall, City of Kansas City. And I was fascinated with him at the time because he was very, soft-spoken, but he was knowledgeable, and he was considered to be an activist in his own right even then. They called him Crusader Rabbit. I didn't understand that because, I'm just getting back to the city myself. But I came to learn that meant something in a very special way, that here was a brother who had assigned himself the task, as the title of my article says, of standing in the gap. And the gap represents, it's from a biblical term that we get from the book of Ezekiel, the gap represents those spaces in between our technology and our expertise, our academics, our prowess, and all of those things. With all of our abilities and our capacities, there's always something that gets missed. There's always a case that goes unsolved. There's always a person that is maltreated and mistreated and who never gets justice. And there's no one to take up their case. Alvin impressed me and obviously the rest of the community with being that person who would dig his heels in and get involved in a case and bite down on it like a pit bull and would not let it go until he got the victory that he was seeking. I'm very, I was honored to be at his homegoing, his funeral on last week, and I thought that was a wonderful tribute that the community did. And I was speaking to some of the local newspaper people and some of the other people, trying to think of a way. Well, how do we expand on it? What did we miss? Several people spoke with what did we miss? And I thought about the gap. That God is always looking for someone to stand in the gap on behalf of the people and seek justice, seek God, seek some kind of victory on behalf of the people. The hero, the unsung one most of the time, but the one who's going to go to bat for them, the one who's going to take a spot in the fight when the fight has gone out of other people. And so I just thought I would add a couple of words to what was already brilliantly laid out in his homegoing ceremony.
Well, let me say to you that I would certainly be remiss if I did not mention in a serious way my conversation with Reverend Wheeler Parker in the Chicago community. Certainly, yes, we talked about technology, but that was not the subject of our call. Reverend Wheeler Parker, who indeed spoke at Alvin Sykes' services,
yes,
was the cousin of Emmett Till.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Reverend Wheeler Parker was the cousin who was present in Mississippi in 1955 when Emmett Till was slain. And these many years later, as you recognized from his presentation last week, it is certainly still with him. He is a very important person in the community. Alvin Sykes was able to call upon the eyewitness in Reverend Wheeler Parker, and we cannot thank Reverend Parker enough for his tenacity, for his courage, for his consistency, for his continuing to do very much in memory of Alvin Sykes. So I wanted to make sure that I did say a thank you to Reverend Wheeler Parker, his family, those who are joining us on this program. Let me go back now to Reverend Millis Doc Bass and this issue of a man in the gap.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned to you in an email a quote that I use often. The term is the relevance of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that you mentioned perhaps back in the 80s. I know it was in the 90s at least, but I think it might have even been back as far as the 80s. But we were working with the Kansas City, Missouri School District. And you were suggesting that one of the motivators for young people to learn is to feel that what they are learning is relevant to their lives. Therefore, the relevance of intelligence has to do with learning something that is important to them. I put that in that context because Emmett Till was made relevant to all of us by Alvin Sykes, so that in learning about Emmett Till, young people have learned about Black history, about law and justice, about reading, about relationships. When you talk about the relevance of intelligence, please expand for us.
If you recall, we were going through a period where our young people there was a term, and I forget it for the moment, but there was a term that they used to describe them playing dumb and not esteeming the intellectualism that we are blessed with. And it'll come to me in a minute. But we were fighting that, if you recall, this resistance to intelligence, this resistance to academic performance, and a preference. What do we call it, Carl?
No, I was saying that one of the accusations was if you dared use standard English and appeared intelligent,
all of that.
you were acting white. I mean,
yeah, they were. There was a period there. We get these seasons every now and then, these little afflictions that come upon us, and they were spurning academics and intelligence. They did not want to be perceived as being smart, and so we developed the SMART campaign.
Yes.
We had a whole campaign to push throughout the school district, at least the schools that I worked in. We were pushing the high level of performance that we wanted them to achieve to. And so we just we just cut to the chase and called it the SMART campaign and made it relevant to be intelligent. We never developed a way to measure whether or not the students, whether or not the young folk came up to our bar and met our expectation, but we had to put the word out there. And we had to start having conversations about increasing your vocabulary, your thinking skills. Remember we talked about continuity.
Yes.
To be able to take a thought and pursue it, to start a thought on this end of the scale and carry it all the way to whether you were describing how to peel a banana or whatever it was, some complex mathematical theory. But to be able to have what we called at the time continuity of thought, because we were speaking in these very short bursts in our communication. Yep, nope, that kind of thing. And so the students did not communicate effectively beyond, say, 3 or 4 words, and had difficulty sometimes carrying out a thought. And it was interspersed with and you know what I mean, know what I'm saying, know what I'm saying. And we had to tell them something. No, we don't. We really don't know what you're saying. And so sometimes, at least my feeling was at the time, that you had to make it the issue, confront it head on.
One of the things that occurs to me, having the honor of addressing Millis Doc Bass, is following up the relevance of intelligence and thinking about those people to whom you and I have been exposed. In my instance, working with youngsters who referred to themselves as gangs on the south side of Chicago. I never allowed them to call themselves gangs in my presence. They were my softball teams. And some of those, obviously, whom I met after moving here in Kansas City, Missouri, young people you have met. And we have found over and over again, Brother Doc Bass, that the range of their intelligence is limitless when discussing, even casually, something important to them. I'll give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. When I would go over to a particular project area in Chicago, the youngsters would ask me where I was going after softball practice. Brother Bass, it did not matter where I was going. Somebody was going that way. And it took about 4 times of them doing that for me to realize that they were going to protect me wherever I went. And they were going to school me on how to matriculate the particular areas of their activities safely. Doc, totally intelligent. but it was
Absolutely.
intelligent within the realm of relevance.
Let me expand on that.
Thank
Now,
you.
you know, I've done quite a bit of writing on
Yes, you
the
have.
so-called game, the game and the hustle,
Uh-huh.
and that's real to the young, because in many cases that is their economy, that's their economic mechanism to success. Even though sometimes a lot of people take the wrong way, but in theory, the game has always been with us. And on the macro level, that's what it is for the big boys, the guys who are at Wall Street, you know, during the rest of the week, and all these guys who have gone to prison for Ponzi schemes and so on and so on. But at the community level, the game is a kind of a premier um, activity, if you will. It is an event. It is a focus. It is an activity in which only certain people who reach a certain level of intelligence can even play. And so then they call themselves players. I've always
Ah,
wondered how to take the game and flip it in a way so that we can incorporate reading, incorporate math, incorporate social studies, because one of the things that you have to do in the game is to be able to interpret your environment. That's just social studies, you know, to
right.
be to be able to know what's going on around you, who's doing what, when and where. All of that is sociology. In many cases, it ends up being pathology and social social that when I try to put this word together, sociopathic behavior
Yes.
is often revealed in the things that we do, in the things that they do to get money or to stay ahead of people. So when they talk about stacking, or when they talk about getting your bag up, that's really math. You're talking about economics, what have you. And so if there was some kind of way like they did in Wyoming, I think I told you about this years ago, when I visited Wyoming, they had a course called Riding, Riding, across the curriculum.
Okay.
These kids got on horses and rode around and got a grade for it. Well, why can't we take some of the things that they deem significant, spin that into a curriculum, and help them get a grade for it? Especially if we incorporate math and English and science and whatever else they are required to learn.
See, I am so with you on that. And man, you make me think of too many things at once. So I'll try to put them within a singular context. But I wrote about something back in our day of working together. I never published it, but the idea was PSPSs, and that stands for Problem Solving Public Schools. The idea is to look at things like infrastructure, to look at things like mental health and physical health, to look at things like mobility and civil rights, and say, here is a problem that needs solving. Why not put that into a particular curriculum and allow students to do it as part of their grade, not just once in a while, but on an ongoing basis? Problem solving public schools would say, President Biden is talking about this great infrastructure legislation that he wants to get passed. They're talking about the big budget. Why not have for everything that you are proposing, the first thing is how will the students attack this, not only for grades now, but to sustain it in the future?
Yeah, I mean, what would be wrong at the state level for developing think tanks, youth think tanks, so you could then take the language that is used at the highest level at the legislative, the congressional level, and break that down into language that the students use. And so they problem solve using the language that they understand, but also advancing or stepping it up to the language that is used, that they're going to be required to use, say, when they go into college.
And make think tanks link tanks,
Yeah,
linking it
yeah.
to what the students are learning. Let me ask you, I definitely don't want to get away without asking you for contact information when someone wants you to speak, make a presentation, one, and then two, uh, tell us something about acquiring your books.
Okay, it's interesting that because I'm preparing now for a book signing that's going to be held at the Black Archives next month. I don't have the exact date yet, but it's going to be next month, and so I'm working on getting more of my books reprinted and getting ready for that. But if someone wants to contact me, I'm on Facebook. My email is lordbless at msn.com. I'm redoing my what do you call those things? Websites. So I can't give you that right now. But and my telephone number is public. It's public. It's in my books, what have you. 804-869-7009. How else can they call me? So far, that's how you can get me. But I'm hoping to turn a corner here in terms of the issues that I've been dealing with. I got caught up in the Trump era too long, I think, and it was causing me some distress. And I didn't want to write too much about that. I think that where we are now, we're going through these shifts, and every season the whole planet goes through them. But America is going through a big shift. We got hit with a pandemic. We got hit with this George Floyd trial, and a number of other issues that are big in the community. The whole Trump era is just been. We're still reeling and rocking from that whole piece, trying to put lives back together, trying to put the country back together, and so on. And so I'm hoping that, and when I talk to guys like you, is how do we get ahead of the curve? I'm almost getting tired of doing commentary on what just happened. Sure is cold-blooded, man, what they did to so-and-so. I want to get ahead of that and be a part of that group who is setting some markers for us to achieve. You know what I'm saying? We have to upgrade the conversation. What can we talk about? What language do we use now? We're going into the post-pandemic era. Unfortunately, we're also into what some people are calling the post-Christian era. So where are we going now? What is the future going to be like for America, Black Americans in particular, and for us who are here on a local level trying to lead the charge? What is that going to look like? What are we talking about? What are our goals? I know we got to vote. I know we got to do that. But something has to happen, in my view. I think there's a passage of scripture, I think it's in Isaiah, which talks about turning the hearts of the fathers back to the children.
Yes.
I think we're kind of embarrassed to talk about that because it'll lead us into conversation about fatherlessness and what would that guy call it, father hunger and things like that. That's real with us.
Yes, sir.
And how do we go ahead? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that I reminded our viewers / listeners of your column in the KUAW paper. And one of the reasons that I wanted to speak to you today was because of some of those. But I would suggest to you that one answer to your questions as it relates to quote a Martin Luther King Jr. book titled Where We Go From Here, or Where Do We Go From Here, unquote, that part of that can be gleaned from what you write in the call paper.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm learning. We're always learning, but I'm still learning. You can't press upon people your gifts. You know, Carl Boyd is multi-talented, multifaceted personality, but we can't push everybody to be like Carl Boyd. They haven't been where you've been and all the things that you've seen and done and said and so on. How do we maximize what a person has? They may not have but one gift, you know. There may be a young brother in the community and all he knows, you understand, is rapping. Well, how do we turn that into a tool that can be used for the betterment of our community? How do we bring fathers and sons back together? Not that sons and mothers are not important, or sons and daughters and mothers are not important, but there is something that's very significant about this dynamic, the synergy that goes on between two males of two different generations. The earth kind of moves when estranged fathers are joined back to their estranged sons. The earth moves. Something is going to ripple in a home. Something is going to ripple throughout a life. Something is going to change in the paradigm, the way a brother thinks, if he believes and knows that his father has got his back. You got to worry about who in the streets got my back. My pops got my back. I'm unstoppable.
Well,
go ahead.
No, finish and then I'll come.
No, I'm done. I'll listen.
One of the things that occurs to me in today's conversation is that you, our very special guest, Millis Doc Bass, asks what to me sound like rhetorical questions when you say, what do we do? Because since the 1980s, you have demonstrated what to do, and we need to follow your lead. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. I have been blessed to meet some very special people, and every once in a while, somebody will congratulate me because I know some very special people. It's not because I'm doing so much, it's because I've been exposed to those I can talk about. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. We were at in Del Godbo's office for a while, right there at on Linwood, and we were in our office, and you had mentioned something that some young people were doing, but you mentioned it within the context of how you were helping them, not only in terms of visualize where they were going, but how to take the first step. You were raising funds for them. You were actively engaged in helping that person or those people. I don't know if you know Anthony Butler, but he's the young brother who has the program Violence I Prevent, not violence I react to, but violence I prevent. So I was glad that you mentioned that. One of the reasons I mentioned your columns is because when I looked at your Black History column that appeared in the call, I was interested in the tyrannical reference, if you will, and there was the column that dealt with clergy and the Christian walk when we need to be running in terms of phenomena that we're looking at. So let me say to you specifically, one of the things that I wanted you to discuss on this particular show, the title is Black History, Witness to American Tyranny in War with God. That's pretty profound.
Oh, yes. Well, I think about that quite a bit because when you squeeze all of the juice out of our troubles, they just about boil down to the trouble we have with God. You don't have too much problems out of men who have found peace with God. They don't beat up their wives. They don't kick their children around. You know what I mean? They don't slang dope in the neighborhood. People who have found a place in God are not terrorists. But flip that. You're not going to find peaceful people. Well, let me step back. Fundamentally, most of our issues, Carl Boyd, and we've said this before, are human relations issues.
Yes, sir.
They told us that in kindergarten, getting along. They gave us a grade for that, getting along with others. We can't do it. My belief is that we can't do it without God. And most of when you magnify that, when you put that on a national scale, our problems in America during the Trump era was because there was great tension and distance between the man the evangelical community was covering for and the man who came out from under that cover to cause so much distress in the country. You don't have the kind of incitement to riot at the capital, the nation's capital. A president did that. That's not a president who was at peace with God. And so when you start peeling all that back and the FBI starts doing their interviews and research, and they start to find out who these people are. These are not people who are at peace with God. These are people who are at war with God. And so this is my theology. I don't impose this on it, but this is my theology. A man who is at peace does not terrorize his own home.
Wow. Thank you very much.
He doesn't burn it down.
Exactly. Or his own community.
Thank you. You expand on that. You don't tear up the whole. You don't get a militia group that goes around talking about a new civil war.
Now, one of the things that I certainly want to hear you address is, on one hand, the actuality, in some cases, the fallacy that we are running away from Christianity, not because Christianity is failing us, but because it's less popular.
I think a number of things contribute to that. Paul talks about a form of godliness. And so there was a period in American history when Black folk just took it at face value. When the TV preachers came on, they got a lot of acceptance. And then we start discovering that a lot of this was a form. And if you want to stir the ire of Black people, let us find out that you're hypocrite. Let us find out that you've been tricking us. And so much of the disdain in this era for Christianity floats around and stirs around this disappointment with how Christianity has been exhibited and preached and demonstrated in American history. It was the Pope. The Pope in what was it, the 1500s, man, 1500s, that put out what they call a papal bull in the name of Christianity, that whatever these explorers, wherever you came from, whatever you found, if it was not Christianized, it was yours. You could take it, you could beat it down, you could destroy it, you could enslave the people. This came from the church. And that kind of sentiment, that kind of behavior has never really changed. I mean, it's subdued, but the spirit of it. Look at the tension between the evangelical community and the Southern Baptist Convention with the Black community. There are movements as we speak to undo the whole civil rights law.
Let me tell you. Yes.
Go ahead. They're angry about that. They feel like that it is an infringement upon their privilege to have civil rights laws and affirmative action. We watched that go down the tubes. Remember? And
now,
so,
let me say to you that we're coming towards the end of the hour, which I consider to be unfair because there's so much.
I won't take up any more time.
Oh, no. I have a question for you. And that's why, in as much as we're coming near the end, it's something that I need for Millis Doc Bass to address. I have found myself responding to some people who have said, whatever the proposition, the ending sentence would be, see, that's why I don't go to church, or that's why I don't trust Christian leadership. And I have found myself responding, I can give you several, not a few, but several, to many examples of sincere Christians who are in leadership positions to whom we need to listen, who properly interpret, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind and strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. As we come towards the end of this particular program, and I'm praying I can get you back, how do you respond to those who exhibit some distrust in our Christian orientation?
Okay, let me say it this way, and I'm going to deal more with that in my next article about what I say, healing by miracle or by medicine.
I'm looking forward to it.
But
Thank you.
I have to talk about faith, right? Faith is not fair. You know, faith is not a magic show. Faith is a battlefield, and you don't get to decorate it with the things that make you comfortable. You meet the enemy with what you got.
Wow.
And so if there are hypocrites on the battlefield, you don't get to take them out. If your end goal is to increase and maximize your confidence and trust in God, don't you think that that's going to be beset with all kinds of shenanigans, all kinds of deceptions, all kinds of distractions? And so we don't get to decorate the battlefield upon which we fight for the credibility of our faith. Whether it's some hypocrite we saw, or whether the baby died and God didn't bring it back to life, or whatever it was, your faith is your responsibility. And that's what separates us. And so we end up jumping overboard because somebody else did.
I really am looking forward to that particular column, maybe next week, the week after, the month after, whenever, because each of them is profound and inspiring, and would like to just give you, Minister Millis Doc Bass, final word on today's broadcast.
Well, let me say it this way, because if it is true, and I believe it is, but if it is true that we live by faith, you have to do what they say in the boxing ring: protect yourself or protect your faith at all times, regardless of what's popular or what's unpopular or whatever somebody else does. In the end, it's you, your faith, and your God.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so very, very much. There are so many other things. I thought that one of the titles that was interesting was including psychotic churchmen and
Yes.
peril in politics provoke a stronger grip on God.
Let me squeeze this in right quick.
Please.
Whenever Jesus had an encounter with a human being, we start getting a list of all of the psychological and sociological issues that we struggle with on this planet.
My God.
Every encounter was a psychological struggle for somebody.
The imperative is, as Reverend Minister Millis Doc Bass says, protect your faith at all times.
All times.
I appreciate that so much. I appreciate you. I am looking forward to another visit sometime soon.
Me too.
God bless
you. We create that third person when we talk, man.
Praise the Lord. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, man. Big thanks to you and the brother Walker for tolerating my foolishness and my limited technology.
Well, let me just say that was just what you claim for today. I think I can top you on that one. I've had many more occurrences of challenging Brother Walker's astuteness where technology is concerned. And he has always proven to be up for the challenge.
Well, God bless you both.
God bless you. On Wave Your Grades, you have heard from Minister Millis Doc Bass. On today's Wave Your Grades, thank you, Louis George Walker. My name is Carl Boyd, gracious God and wonderful Wanda. I'm on my